In the summer of 2025, the city of Portland, Oregon found itself at the heart of a national controversy, as tensions simmered beneath the surface of its vibrant streets. What began as a series of passionate protests soon escalated into a dramatic confrontation between local and federal authorities, drawing the eyes of the nation to the Pacific Northwest. Portland became the epicenter of a fierce legal showdown over the limits of presidential power and the rights of states to self-govern. The city's federal courthouse, already a symbol of justice, now stood as a battleground for competing visions of American democracy. The Trump administration, citing the need to protect federal property amid ongoing unrest, deployed National Guard troops and federal officers to the city. This show of force was met with immediate and vocal opposition from Oregon's state and local officials, who saw the move as an overreach of executive authority. At press conferences and in public statements, these officials argued that the president lacked the legal authority to send military forces into their state without the governor's explicit consent. Their resistance ignited a high-stakes test of American federalism, raising urgent questions about the balance of power between Washington, D.C., and the states. The legal battle quickly spread beyond Oregon's borders. Cities like Chicago, facing similar federal interventions, filed lawsuits seeking to block what they described as unconstitutional actions by the administration. The nation watched as a patchwork of legal challenges emerged, each one adding fuel to the growing debate. In courtrooms across the country, judges were confronted with a pivotal question: how should the courts balance the president's duty to enforce federal law with the fundamental rights of states to govern their own affairs? The answers would have far-reaching implications for the future of American governance. In a landmark decision, U.S. District Judge Karen Immergut issued a temporary restraining order, halting the deployment of out-of-state National Guard troops to Oregon. Her ruling sent shockwaves through legal and political circles, as it underscored the judiciary's crucial role as a check on executive power. Judge Immergut found that the administration had failed to provide sufficient justification for such a significant military mobilization. Her decision highlighted the importance of judicial oversight in times of crisis, reminding the nation that even the highest offices are bound by the rule of law. The Trump administration, however, maintained that its actions were necessary to address what it described as escalating violence and threats to federal property. Opponents, meanwhile, argued that the deployment was an unnecessary and provocative show of force, deepening divisions within the country. As the legal battle intensified, courtrooms became the new battlegrounds for centuries-old debates about the proper boundaries between federal and state authority. Lawyers, judges, and officials grappled with constitutional questions that had shaped the nation since its founding. The initial injunctions paused the immediate confrontation, but they were only the beginning. With appeals and new lawsuits on the horizon, the stage was set for a prolonged and consequential legal fight in higher courts, one that would ultimately help define the future relationship between the federal government and the states. The legal battle escalated to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, a pivotal arena where judges meticulously examined the question of whether courts should intervene in the president's decision to deploy the National Guard. This deployment was a significant move, raising questions about the balance of power between the executive branch and judicial oversight. The Trump administration staunchly defended its position, asserting that the president possesses broad constitutional powers to federalize the Guard. This action was deemed necessary to protect federal interests, especially in times of perceived national unrest or crisis. This stance, however, posed a direct challenge to state authority, positioning the president as the ultimate arbiter of domestic security. It raised fundamental questions about the limits of presidential power and the role of states in maintaining order. The appellate judges engaged in a rigorous debate, pondering whether judicial intervention was appropriate in executive decisions concerning law enforcement. This debate was crucial, as it could set a precedent for future executive actions. Their skepticism was palpable, suggesting that the initial restraining order might be overturned. Such a decision could potentially clear the way for federal deployments, altering the landscape of federal and state power dynamics. The divide between district and appellate courts underscored deep disagreements over the balance of executive power and judicial oversight. This divide highlighted the ongoing struggle to define the boundaries of authority in a complex legal and political environment. Ultimately, the outcome of this legal battle would not only shape the immediate situation, but also set a lasting precedent for the boundaries of presidential authority in times of crisis. influencing future administrations in their approach to domestic security. Oregon officials, led by Governor Kate Brown, fiercely opposed the federal deployment, calling it an overreaction to mostly peaceful protests. They argued local law enforcement could manage the situation and that federal intervention threatened state sovereignty. Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker, echoed these concerns, warning of dangerous precedents if presidents could override local leaders. Critics accused the administration of political theater, not public safety. When the administration tried to bring in out-of-state guard units after being blocked, opponents saw it as an attempt to circumvent the courts. State legal arguments emphasized that the protests didn't justify such drastic federal action, and that the federal presence only heightened tensions. Their strategy proved the intervention was both legally and factually unwarranted. As legal challenges mounted, President Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807, allowing active-duty military deployment without state consent. This move alarmed critics, who argued the protests didn't meet the act's high threshold for use. Legal scholars and civil liberties advocates saw the threat as a coercive tactic, not a genuine response to crisis. The debate shifted from National Guard deployment to the possibility of regular military involvement in domestic law enforcement. This raised fears about militarizing the government's response and eroding the separation between military and civilian policing. The judiciary now faced the risk that its rulings could trigger even more extreme executive action. The outcome would set a precedent for future presidential power during domestic unrest. Judge Karen Immergut's rulings became a major obstacle for the Trump administration. She issued a restraining order blocking National Guard deployments from other states, citing a lack of credible evidence for federal intervention. Immergut questioned whether the administration was trying to sidestep her previous rulings by using out-of-state troops. Her decisions provided Oregon with legal protection and time to build its case. The administration quickly appealed, escalating the fight to the Ninth Circuit. These temporary blocks didn't resolve the conflict, but shaped its immediate trajectory. The judiciary's power to check the executive was on full display. The legal battle was far from over, with the fate of federal deployments hanging in the balance. The Trump administration insisted it had a duty to protect federal property, especially a federal immigration building targeted during protests. Officials argued local authorities failed to maintain order, justifying federal intervention. Oregon leaders countered that the protests were mostly peaceful and that federal action was an overreach. The administration's narrative painted Portland as under siege, while critics called this exaggerated. After legal setbacks, the administration doubled down in appeals, arguing courts should defer to the president on national security. Their legal case rested on the president's broad authority as commander-in-chief, even without state approval. This robust defense of executive power was central to their justification for the controversial deployments. The conflict that unfolded in Portland in 2020 became a defining moment in the ongoing and often contentious struggle over the boundaries of federal and state power in the United States. As federal agents arrived in the city, tensions quickly escalated, drawing national attention to the question of who truly holds authority during times of crisis. This confrontation forced a modern reckoning with a fundamental constitutional question: can the president deploy military or federal forces against the explicit wishes of a state's elected leaders? The deployment of the National Guard and other federal agents in various cities sparked heated debates among politicians, legal scholars, and the public alike. The resulting legal battle set important precedents that are likely to shape how future crises are handled and how the relationship between Washington, D.C. and the states evolves. Courtrooms became battlegrounds for arguments about the limits of executive power and the rights of states to govern their own affairs. The events in Portland also fueled a nationwide debate about the increasing militarization of law enforcement and the government's overall response to civil unrest. Many questioned whether such forceful tactics were necessary or if they only served to inflame tensions further. Critics accused the administration of using federal power not to restore order but to suppress dissent and intimidate protesters, arguing that these actions escalated the situation rather than calming it. The visible clashes between federal agents and civilians became a symbol of the broader struggle over civil liberties. The judiciary's role as a check on executive authority was put to the test, with different courts offering divergent views on the legality and appropriateness of federal intervention. Judges weighed constitutional principles against the realities of public safety and civil rights, Ultimately, the standoff in Portland pushed the boundaries of presidential power and highlighted the ongoing fragility of the federal-state balance. It raised urgent questions about how much power the executive branch should wield during emergencies. The questions raised in Portland remain central to understanding the limits of power in America. As the nation continues to grapple with issues of protest, public safety, and government authority, the lessons from Portland serve as a crucial reference point for future debates about the Constitution and the distribution of power in American democracy.